the bottom of the Mediterranean lies an underwater tomb, the final resting place of 50 lost souls. Emerging from the darkness is a sunken German U-boat, perfectly preserved in the murky depths. Entangled in cables and fishing nets, its hatches are still sealed shut, the sailors still trapped inside. But what happened beneath the surface? What mysteries are lurking 400 feet below? For more than 80 years, the wartime submarine has rested on the seabed, engulfed by the ocean. Its bow points eerily upwards as if reaching for the surface, frozen in time. The sailors' final moments are etched into the extraordinary preservation of the wreck, a time capsule detailing the chilling last minutes of those inside. But not all is as it seems. Discovered quite by accident in 2005, small details raised some unsettling questions. The mystery surrounding the wreck has been carefully pieced together by historians, deep-sea divers, and submarine experts to find out exactly what happened to German submarine U-455. For decades, there had been rumors about the missing sub. It had sent its last message on April 2, 1944. 4 days later, a search was conducted. The ships were hoping to spot something, anything, an oil slick, some debris floating off the coast of Italy, but there was nothing. For the comrades of those missing, it was a mystery, and after the war, some still speculated as to what exactly happened on that fateful voyage. Occasionally, a fisherman claimed to have spotted something in the depths. The stories would start up again before falling silent once more. But in 2005, one of these claims was overheard by Genoese deep-sea diver Lorenzo del Veneziano. Lorenzo is credited with discovering a large number of deep-sea plane, ship, and submarine wrecks. He's fascinated by what lies beneath the waves, the history hidden in each discovery. He knew of the lost U-boat, but by then, the stories and theories had turned into legend, and there was little hope of finding U-455. But when a deep-sea coral fisherman, or corallaro, mentioned spotting something looming in the depths off Portofino, Lorenzo was determined to find out once and for all if the German U-boat really was down there. Plunging into the shadowy depths off Punta Chiappa on the Portofino Peninsula, it was a long shot. But when he descended beyond 100 meters, 330 feet, his flashlight landed on something below. Then he saw it. A sharp, knife-like bow cutting through the darkness. This was no shipwreck. This was the unmistakable shape of a submarine. Lorenzo's heart was drumming in his ears as he dropped deeper and deeper. His light revealed the submarine, tilted upward at a 45-degree angle, as if reaching up for the sunlight above. The stern had been blown off and lay scattered across the sea floor. But this was just the beginning. Although Lorenzo believed that he had finally found the missing U-455 U-boat, there was no way of formally identifying it. No markings, no hull numbers. Lost to the sea some 60 years before, the submarine was covered in marine concretions, hard, crusty secretions that have built up through time. Oysters and anemones clung to its surface. The antennae of elusive lobsters protruded from nooks and crannies. Nearly all of the submarine's surface was concealed by the marine environment. And yet, there were subtle clues used to identify it. What stood out for historians on this particular wreck was the unusual turret. It was different from other submarines in the 7th class, and that feature was a key to its identification. Old records revealed a modified turret, something unique to this submarine. This was without a doubt the missing U-boat. Despite its identification, the submarine was still wrapped in mystery. The 50 sailors were still trapped inside, a watery grave like so many lost at sea. Unraveling its cryptic final voyage was a complex jigsaw puzzle, but slowly the pieces came together. They never opened the submarine, but what they discovered from the outside was even more disturbing. Frozen in time, the positioning and features of the submarine revealed snippets of its harrowing last moments. One diver's flashlight fell on something nearby, a large grey sphere laying on the seabed. Beneath the encrusted barnacles and marine debris, it was clear to see that the periscope was extended. This meant that the submarine was near the surface at the time of its demise. And there was more. The outer hatch on the turret was open, but inside this, the inner hatch was closed, typical when moving at the surface. This meant that there were men on the turret, or tower, when the submarine went down. They were scouting the surface of the sea, navigating from the fresh air above the waves. Ahead of them was the thin grey line of the Italian coastline on the horizon. They were nearly home, but they failed to spot the danger that lay ahead. On April 2nd, 1944, U-455 sent a message as it departed its patrol area off the coast of Algiers and headed for its base in Italy's La Spezia. Captained by 26-year-old Hans Martin Scheiber, the submarine was crewed by young men, the oldest of which was 31 years old and the youngest just 18. The conditions inside the submarine were cramped. To get onto the turret, men had to crouch down and crawl through the tiny hatches. Many sailors were violently seasick, with no way of escaping the constant rolling motion of the sea. They ate, slept, and worked almost on top of each other, all sharing the same tight space. And then there was the fear. The constant anxiety of not knowing what was coming. Depth charges were dropped from above. The crew would count the explosions, the booming sounds just yards from the hull, hoping and praying that the next wouldn't be the one to hit them. Initially, the German U-boats made a powerful impact on the war. They had been hailed as unsinkable, a domineering presence that had been responsible for thousands of lives lost at sea. U-455 itself had completed 10 successful missions. But during the Battle of the Atlantic, out of 863 German submarines deployed, only 233 came back. Their survival rate was less than 30%. The crew of U-455 knew the odds were against them, but on that final voyage, morale was high. They were heading for safety, and it was tantalizingly close. But out of nowhere came a heart-stopping sound, one no submariner wishes to hear. Described by other sailors who survived a similar disaster, there was the sudden and unmistakable sound of metal on metal. A loud clunk, clunk, clang, clang. Those on the turret at the time wouldn't have seen it. Those below deck watched, mouths agape, as their eyes followed the terrifying sound across the bulkheads above them. They knew what was coming. They knew this was the end. Moments later, a catastrophic explosion tore the rear of the submarine from the hull. Those on the turret were thrown into the sea with the violent impact. In a matter of seconds, the submarine plummeted downwards. A violent plume of bubbles tore to the surface. Then, silence. The submarine was swallowed by the Mediterranean in a matter of seconds. The inner hatch was still firmly closed. The crew on board had no time to open it, no time to escape. But with the angle of the submarine, the stern landing with a booming thump on the sea floor, and the stern pointing upwards, in all likelihood, there was a significant air bubble inside the hull. This meant that those inside would have scrambled from the rushing water, sealing some compartments in a desperate attempt at survival. Some may have survived the initial blast, trapped in an air pocket. But at that depth, escape was impossible. The oxygen would run out long before rescue could arrive. The crew's final goodbyes would have been the memories of loved ones in their heads. But how had the crew sailed directly into a minefield laid by their own allies? It turned out that the location of the minefield was top secret. Nobody, except for the highest-ranking officials, knew about it, not even those on the same side. The crew of U-455 hadn't been given a minefield map. With land in sight, they had navigated directly into the middle of a minefield. Their voyage was doomed from the very beginning. More than 60 years later, a former crew member of U-455, who was not on board that fateful day, was given the opportunity to view the wreck, where his fallen comrades still lie. As he descended in a modern-day sub, U-455 came into view. It was a harrowing experience for Gerard Schwartz, with his best friend still entombed 116 meters, 381 feet, below the Mediterranean. Of the 40,000 submariners Germany deployed during World War II, 30,000 died at sea. And U-455 now lies as a war memorial at the bottom of the sea, honouring those fallen but not forgotten. After everything they survived, it wasn't the enemy that killed them.